Hello and welcome to SonicLAB. Today we're looking at the brand new Behringer Poly D. Well, I say we are, I am, and I think there are a few other people. It's one of those kind of simultaneous release type of affairs. So this is my take on it. So what is this? It's a nice looking thing, isn't it? It's essentially a 4-voice Paraphonic Model D. So a kind of Minimoog style voice, but with paraphony of 4. It's based a little bit on the Korg Mono Poly. I'm pointing over there because I've got one of those. Not in sound, but in terms of concept. So we can use it in mono mode, where we can line up all the oscillators, or we can use it in unison mode, where it will split them between the notes played, or we have poly mode, in which case one note per oscillator. Now, there are some other differences as well, but before we get onto that, let's take a look at the build quality. Nice wood sides, solid construction, but the real kicker is, and we can lift this up. So it's got this kind of ability to pop up a little flip here that we can set the different levels. So you can have it at various different heights here, however you want. I've got it like this because obviously the camera's overhead and it makes it look a little bit easier. Oscillators. They're they're Minimoog style oscillators. We've got switchable waveforms, triangle, shark tooth, sawtooth, square, 50%, 25% PWM, and that's the first three. They're exactly the same. They all go from low frequency mode to 2 feet and plus or minus 7 semitones. The last oscillator, which can be switched out of control and used as an LFO, has basically ramp up instead of shark tooth, but the rest are the same. Another thing that they've added is the distortion. So the distortion, if you've used the Neutron or more recently the TD3, which is the 303 clone, it's based on that. And this is slightly different. On the Neutron, you just had a control to bring it in, so you could turn it right off. On this one, you've got one of these little rocker switches, which is a shame because I quite like using the tone control as a sort of additional tone shaping, but you can't shape the tone without having some drive, so that's a bit of a shame. But we've also got this chorus, which is a Juno style chorus. We can have chorus 1, chorus 2, or both together, and that's again switchable in and out, and that's stereo, so it makes the whole thing a stereo unit. So if we now flip the back up, we can look at the connections. USB for MIDI, in, out and through on DINs. We've got outputs for controls, so we've got aftertouch from the keyboard and an amount, and we could patch that out and maybe into one of the external inputs. Then we've got pitch, which is the current pitch of the keyboard, V-trig, which is basically the gate, but in V-trig style, so it's not your standard trigger. Then we've got velocity output, again with a sensitivity control, external signal in, so we can do that thing where we can take the headphone out and blow it up into the mixer, sync in and out because we've also got a sequencer, pair of mono outputs that create a stereo pair, external V-trig input, and then control inputs for the VCA, the filter, the oscillator pitch, and the mod source. So back to this, yeah, I did say sequencer. We've got it's an 8-step sequencer, somewhat reminiscent of the way that Korg do things. I say 8 steps, it's actually 64-step in banks of 8, and we've got the ability to store 8 banks of 8 sequences as well. And it is polyphonic, it will store poly notes, although you will have to play each note exactly right. There's also a little arpeggiator in here. So let's have a listen, shall we? So let's start off, we'll just have in mono mode, we've got all the oscillators off apart from one, we're in sawtooth, lowest. Let's go into the filter, eh? Why not? Let's start with that. Because this is a ladder filter, like on the original Moog, but it's also, you can switch into high pass mode. So let's try a bit of square. And go to shark tooth. Nice bit of girth to it. I mean, the oscillators do sound like they've got plenty of weight and buzz. I couldn't tell you whether they're exact copies of a Model D because I don't have one here, and it's not a synth that I'm intimate with. One other thing, the mixer here, obviously with the Moog, I'm kind of used to hearing, you know, depending on how much drive you put in, what the filter does, and not so much with this. So if I go back to a sawtooth, half 50% emphasis, as you would imagine, you start to lose the bottom end. And then what you'd think is you drive a bit more into it. It actually doesn't change, the characteristic doesn't change. And I think that's probably because we've got 4 oscillators going into it, and I don't think that they can actually have that extra headroom. So you don't get to control the drive of the filter like you did with perhaps the Model D or the original. It doesn't have that kind of burn that you could do. If you want the extra stuff, you could take the headphone out and go in and come in via the external input, and that will give it a little bit of extra drive, but it's not quite the same thing as having that drive that you get just from the classic analog filter. So let's just do that. I'm coming out of the headphones here, and I'm going to go into the external input. And I'll take the level down for now, and we've got this sound which is quite resonant. So we're bringing, as we bring more level in to the filter, it sort of suppresses the amount of harmonics that you get. So you do get some alter, and then till you go too far, which is quite nice. Some people really like that, but that's a little trick that you used to do with the original Minimoog. So yeah, you can do that with this as well. Should also point out we've got a high pass mode, which is we can pick out those. Pick out those low harmonics. We go into poly mode and perhaps play some chords. If I switch them all on, they're all in sawtooth. Let's just watch out for the level. Got some of those nice harmonics in there, which, you know, into some effects can really generate a lot of lovely ambience with the poly. That's one thing about this that I'm confused at. I mean, it's nice to have the chorus. Let's just switch that on. I'm not sure. I wouldn't have preferred to have a time-based effect in there instead, like a delay, like on the Neutron, or possibly a reverb, although I suppose that would bring this into a slightly different territory, but certainly a delay. So I'm not sure about, I mean, it's nice to have a chorus, but I would have liked to maybe have that be a delay instead. We've got some good tight envelopes. These are the attack, decay, sustain. We can switch the decay into release mode on this. So chorus out. Of course, we can slightly detune these because we will have to manually tune these oscillators to get chords. I suppose we get a sort of slightly Juno vibe. But we only have a single, remember it is paraphonic, we only have a single OS envelope and a single VCA envelope as well. Right, let's demonstrate a few more features because there's some interesting modulation routings and ways that we can control things here. And just something to remember with this synthesizer, because it's essentially based on the Model D, which had actually quite limited amount of things, you have to kind of think differently. You know, the gestures that you make on maybe a more modern synthesizer with lots more features are not going to get you in the same territory. The thing about the Model D, there's a lot of stuff in there that you've got to find out how to get out of it. And as such, it's actually a sort of synthesizer player's synthesizer in the purest terms. And that's quite nice. So I've got the sequence running, which I will just press go. It's just a... Oh, actually, I've got all my oscillators off, and that's something I should mention. You can hear that. All the oscillators are switched off, but I'm hearing this little, it sounds like a sort of gate or a I'm not quite sure what that is. Whether this is going to be in the production models, I couldn't say for sure, but that's what I'm dealing with here. So anyway, let's switch the oscillator on and hit play on the sequencer. Very nice. Let's bring a second oscillator in. We're in mono mode. And a third one, bit of detune. Now what I'm going to do here, what I've got here is oscillator 4 routed via the modulation matrix, which is left or right, LFO or noise, depending how you've got it switched, going up into here, controlling, using oscillator 4, just controlling the filter. I've switched off the modulation matrix in here. So now, bring some white noise in, because we've got white and pink noise. Really interesting sound. Get into LFO territories. Let's bring the chorus in. Let's take that down again. Let's try the distortion. Let's take that down. Brings in a bit of noise there. We get really dirty with some of those routings and some of that. So what I'm saying is, you know, it may seem very simple, but we got a whole lot of timbres and tones out of that. Couple of points here I would like to see. Now, as this is, you know, obviously not a Minimoog, you know, it's got 4 voices, it's got chorus and distortion. What I'd love to have seen right here is a bit more modulation matrix stuff. So I'd like to see maybe a rocker switch here that allowed you to modulate the wave shape of one or all of these oscillators via, you know, the mod bus. That would have been really awesome, because I think, you know, the thing about a fixed wave synth, you know, no pulse width, boo-hoo, you know, no wave, no kind of morphing waves. I mean, I don't know if the secret, you know, whether the circuitry would allow for that, but wouldn't that be great if we could have that as well? Imagine that on some of the pads with some movement. It would be pretty nice. Some more little features here. As we go with these switches here, we can go in and out of high pass and low pass mode. Filter modulation, we can switch on or off. Keyboard control, this is basically tracking, so that's all off. I think that's probably 25%. 50%, 100%, I think possibly is how it works. Then we've got the decay portion switch on between white and pink noise, which is nice to have. And those are the so really simplistic controls. And it's one of those synths that, you know, if you played it in a shop, you know, for like a really short amount of time, you might come away thinking, well, that's all right. But actually, when you dig in a little bit and maybe put some effects on it, it's got some lovely, I mean, really lovely sounds in there. I don't know quite how, you know, because we've also often thought, you know, a polyphonic, actual polyphonic Minimoog is a bit much. But actually in this instance, what happens then is the emphasis, the ladder filter, because it drops some of the bottom end out, is actually quite a good thing, because we don't get those really muddy chords. So let's just run a couple more things. We'll run the ARP, so I'm just going to press a note. And you'll also notice I've got at the back here, I've got the aftertouch out coming into the filter, which means I can do this. And there's also other patterns. There's 8 in here. I quite like number 4. And then I've got the pitch bend here, routed to the filter envelope, which is then increasing the amount of filter envelope. I've already got a little bit. Let's put the but I could, if I wanted, let's see. Route the filter envelope to the oscillators, but not oscillator 4, because I've got that without the pitch control. So I'm just basically trying to give you some ideas of what those routings are, and there are quite a lot, you know, so there is quite a lot you can do. Right, I suppose we should really take a look at some of the polyphonic or the paraphonic capabilities as well. Okay, so I've got a little poly patch here. Take the chorus out. We're just going to start with the basic sound. I've got a bit of glide on. So it's got a nice tone. The oscillators do sound nice together. These are all sawtooth. I've got a bit of filter mod using this oscillator here, which goes nicely into audio rates, but I'm also adding a bit of extra filter envelope here. We can put a bit of vibrato. And I've got the top oscillator set an octave lower, so you get these nice inversions. But as soon as you put some effects in, if you can see here, I've got the Ventris on. I'm just gonna, just a little bit. It's got a really, it has got a nice tone. Not really what you call classic kind of brassy poly, so that you can get a bit more. We can do a bit more of that. But because it's paraphonic, you can't, you know, you're not getting. Re-trigger the envelope very easily. Try some chorus on there as well. You know, it's quite nice. But I would say, you know, as a polyphonic synthesizer, not so much. You know, it's got, there are, and I guess that's where this kind of comes, we get into this kind of slight identity crisis, because obviously Behringer have been sort of rocking it on the really affordable, highly featured, I mean, yes, some clones, but ultimately, you know, you're getting a lot of bang for the buck. And I'm being told that this is round about $699 US, which kind of takes it into the Minimoog XD territory, which has way more going on because it's true polyphony, it's got loads of effects, you know, it also takes it into the boutique. So we're starting to compete. I mean, ultimately what you are getting is a really decent sounding, sort of vintage classic monophonic synthesizer with additional layout. I mean, sure, it does 4-voice paraphony, but I would say as a kind of polysynth, buying it for its polyphony, you're probably not getting the features that you might want in a poly. I mean, the oscillators do sound really nice together, and they sort of gel and blend, and they've got this kind of like, this sort of tonal quality, which is very pleasing. But there are a couple of other things I want to show you as well. I'm not really sure why we've got low frequency on these 3 oscillators, because you put them into low frequency, you're not going to hear anything because you can't modulate them. You can't send them anywhere. This one makes sense. And as I said, it would have been nice to have a delay, because as soon as you put time-based stuff on this, I mean, yeah, it's the Ventris, everything sounds good on that, but so there you have it. That is the brand new Behringer Poly D. Like I say, I'm told it's round about $699. That price may well change at the point of publishing. I've had to record this before then, so I could be a little bit off. We have to wait and see for sure. It's a nice sounding instrument. It's a nice thing. but perhaps not as fully featured as modern polyphonic synthesizer. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.